Hi everyone, it's Barry Carter here once again. I'm with Dara O'Kearney, and we are looking at some real life hands that I have played in the last couple of weeks. As you know, Dara and I have just written a book on GTO, and normally what happens when we write books together is I play the format that we're writing about whilst we write the book, and you can kind of see me improve. I didn't play a great deal of poker whilst writing this book, so I'm only really applying the lessons after we published the book. And today I wanted to look at some hands with Dara to see, first of all, if he agreed that I took a GTO line, and probably more importantly, was I right to take the GTO line? Oh yeah, I completely owned myself in this hand.
Oh, we like this.
Oh yeah, I'm not too sure. I'll talk you through the hand, and you may need to talk me through this hand before we even go into GTO Wizard with your thoughts. So the guy, small blind completes. 30 big blinds effective. I need to have ace high on some of my checked boards, and I thought ace 8 was not a great hand to raise or bluff. So I felt this was a good spot to check instead of raise.
Quite often in these spots, we raise the stronger and weaker ones, and these are what we call.
I'd be wanting to raise the good aces and the aces that can make a wheel as a bluff. Yeah, exactly. So we hit our hand. He is going to lead out, I think. Yep. And I think this is just a pure bluff catcher. He's probably got more aces than I do in his range anyway. Raising will only fold out the bluffs. So I felt this was a good spot to do that.
Yeah, okay, we pick up a gut shot on the turn.
Well, this is the thing. So my kind of criteria for getting aggressive with with top pair, specifically an ace, is either if I've got a good kicker, or a two paired obviously, or if I've got some sort of backdoor equity. So I felt that this was actually a good spot for me to bet, even though I previously said my hand was a bluff catcher.
Okay. Yeah, I have to admit, like, blind on blind spots are just the most confusing ones because the two ranges.
Yeah, I'm terrible at them. Yeah.
I mean, every human is. That's just the nature of it. Before we look at GTO Wizard, like, what I would say is that if I had a weaker hand, I would definitely want to bet. Like, if I just had the gut shot, or gut shot with something worse, then because I wouldn't be worried about having to fold to a check raise. And if I had a stronger hand, I would also want to bet. So I suspect this hand might fall between the two. Like the draw is just a gut shot, and the ace is just a ace, not great kicker. I'm going to be very interested to see what GTO Wizard does here. But I think I would be more inclined to check this hand than you would be.
Yeah. And then obviously I've got myself in a terrible situation where he's re-raised me pretty.
Well, we can't fold, obviously. Because
we can't fold, even though we're praying for an 8.
At least he didn't shove. We're getting a very good price now. And if he shoves now, we have a pure bluff catcher.
And yeah, so I folded. I felt he was much stronger than I was.
Yeah.
In GTO world, I'm thinking, right, I block a straight, I block better ace X.
And you unblock a lot of his bluffs. Like, you unblock diamonds, for example. You unblock king queen. So you're blocking value. You're blocking a lot of two pairs and sets with your ace, and you're blocking straights with your 8, and you're unblocking pretty much all of his bluffs. Well, I guess he can turn some 8x into bluffs on the turn, but you're unblocking stuff like queen 10 as well. So yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised if GTO Wizard decides that this is a good enough bluff catcher to call off.
In real life world, like what's he small check raise in the turn with? Like diamonds.
We know what the value is, and it's nothing worse than our hand.
Yeah.
But so it really comes down to how often he's bluffing. Like, is he capable of turning king queen into that kind of raise, or is he capable of turning diamonds into a bluff check raise? Most players probably are not. So
Yeah,
this is a spot where there's going to be quite a large discrepancy between the real world and GTO world. Like in GTO world, he's supposed to bluff. He's supposed to have a bluff in every line, and he has lots of obvious bluffs here, all of which were unblocking. But in reality, he probably just improved on the turn. It's most likely to be something like Ace-7, or Jack-7 or 9-7. Any of those hands are possible, or pocket sevens, or I guess 10-8, even though we blocked that.
So I folded in real life because I just genuinely just didn't think he's going to.
I don't think people. I think that's a very underbluffed line. Bet the flop, check raise the turn, effectively shove the river. People almost never do that as a bluff. It's much more likely if they're bluffing, they're going to keep firing on the turn rather than check raising.
So once again, small. So it was a small blind complete, which is
it's going to be just a wide woolly range.
Pretty much everything except the good stuff and some suited bluffs.
Yeah, obviously he's missing the top of the stuff that always gets raised.
Yeah,
that's the most significant thing, I guess.
I pretty much got it wrong with the my idea for what to check, but I'm actually really surprised at this. I thought the wheel aces would be raising in a spot like this.
Yeah, but they don't want to get shoved on.
Yeah.
That's kind of the key point here. Like you should be raising hands that you're happy to fold to a shove. So if under the gun raises, then a wheel ace can make a good raise, because if you get shoved on, you're in bad shape. But blind on blind, the wheel aces are actually their hands you really want to see a flop with.
Right.
So actually, the pecking order is the strongest aces, which you can raise for value. The second strongest are the wheel aces, and they don't want to raise because they don't want to get limp re-raised. And then the weakest aces are actually the other portion, the ones in the middle. They're the ones you're less unhappy that if you get check re-raised or check shoved on, you end up having to fold.
So already deviated off the game tree, so it's going to be interesting to see how we can carry on studying this. So he puts the bet out with most of his range some of the time.
Again, this is why these spots are so confusing. But there's no hand that's a pure bet or a pure check. No. So ace king is close to a pure bet, but
and we do have ace-8.
We don't fold any ace, and we don't
fold much really,
and we don't do any raising. So even though our range is different, it's clear we have a very clear call here.
Okay, so let's continue. So the turn is 7 of spades.
Okay, so now he's switching to a more polar strategy.
Yeah.
Because he has a lot of hands that want to just check and get to showdown now, but his value hands want to keep shoveling money into the pot. So it makes sense for him now to switch to a polar strategy. Bet big with your best value and your best bluffs. Check with a lot of your marginal hands.
So he does check, and when we're the big blind, we kind of and like obviously because ace-8 isn't really in our range that much, although it does bet all the time that when it is in the hand.
That's interesting. It bets because his range is supposed to be condensed. Like he's supposed to have bet big with his really strong hands. And I think in practice he hasn't done that, which is why in practice I would be more inclined to check this hand.
Yeah.
And I think the advantage of checking this hand is because his turn range is stronger than it's supposed to be. We kind of want to see the river without having to put too much money in or any more money in. But also, like if it is a hand that he has either given up with or he thinks isn't weak enough to bet the turn, but if we check behind the turn, he might think a jack is strong enough to bet on the river. So I think in practice we can fairly confidently call any reasonable river size bet once we've checked behind on the turn.
So in game, I bet he
Raise.
Small raise in there. I mean, are we going too far off the game tree now?
No, it's fine. That's just again, like, it's confusing because we don't really know what he should be raising. But you know, A6 isn't folding, so Ace8 clearly isn't folding. Ace8 is a better hand than A6. So the call is clearly correct. And then on the river, he moves all in, and again, A6 is calling, so Ace8 is definitely calling again.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, that's his shove range on the river.
That's right.
Just look at the big blind. Yeah, like A6 is calling, presumably. Just A4 is always calling. Well, that's a pair, but A6. Okay, so A6 mostly calls when it has the ace of diamonds. So
we had ace 8.
Sorry, go back to ace. If we do have ace 8, yeah, it's a pure call. It's a pure call because it's just too good a bluff catcher. Yeah, go back to ace 8, even though it's not technically in the range. You can see the EV is pretty high. It's 1.53 big blinds, because it is blocking a lot of value. But in practice, I think people are way under bluffing. Again, if you go back to his bet all in range and just look at what he's supposed to be betting, what he's supposed to be doing that with, like, he's supposed to turn queen 10 off into a bluff. He's supposed to
8-6 is a bluff as well.
Yeah, there's lots of misdraws there, basically. But in practice, I don't think people take this line as a bluff very often.
No.
And the final thing I would say is, you know, the pot's very big by the end. GTO Wizard is saying slam dunk call because it makes 1.5 big blinds, but he doesn't have to be under bluffing by very much for that 1.5, that plus 1.5 big blinds to turn into a fairly hefty minus.
Yes.
Which I think is the case in practice.
Good. I feel better. I actually feel a lot better about that hand, even though I think the turn was a mistake. So this is a really common spot, this next one. 48 big blinds effective. We get a button raise, and then I re-raise with ace queen off. And we'll see eventually.
You'll eventually get there.
I'll speed this up, actually. Yeah, so
I would use a bigger size than that, I think. Okay, that'll be the first thing to check, what size GTO Wizard wants to use. Like, he's getting an amazing price now, so that shouldn't really fold too much.
This is a dynamic board. This feels like a good board to bet big with, because I'd be doing that with hands like ace 9, 10s, jacks, queens, and so on. So I put a 2/3 pot bet in.
Okay.
I know there's merit to overbet in there, but again, this was a
yeah, I think we're going to have a bet big and check range. The question is which range this hand belongs in.
Yeah. And there's not much more to tell in this hand. I just didn't know what to do. I literally just didn't know what to do on this turn. So I check folded on the turn. And then I picked this hand out literally because I was just curious what the GTO solution is to when we make a bluff with not much we miss.
Well, yeah, I mean, before we look at it, I can tell you that we should follow ththrough sometimes and we should give up sometimes.
Spoiler alert, this is pretty much what I mean. This is a small bet size, which I get it's a small bet size, but he's got an easy shove on the river. Like, do you change anything when you see? Are you ever tempted to call this or come over the top with this or anything like that? Or
no, not in practice. No, I think he probably just has a pair.
Yeah,
he might be going to check behind on the river, but we don't have the price to try and hit one of our 6 outs. I don't think he's ever doing that with a worse hand than ours.
So once again,
okay, you can see the sizing is way off. Like,
yes,
he wants to go to 9.2. Like, when you're out of position in that spot, you really have to just mash the pot button. And because you just give him far too good a price. When you make it 6, he's getting 3-1 on the call essentially. So, like, can't really fold anything.
Yeah, and he's going to be in position as well. So
in position, yeah, exactly. And you're going to get flops like this where it's tricky to know what to do. So
So I should have bet bigger. Ace Queen off is your re-raise. Just
I mean, you can leave it the same for now because use the size. Well, obviously we have no choice but to use the size that they use. But to be honest, your range is probably the same anyway, so it's fine.
We miss obviously, but we bet almost the entire range on this board. As I suggested, it was actually I was expecting to see some overbets here. I guess if it was like 9-6-3, there would have been overbets.
Yeah, there's two things going on here. Like anytime you are range betting, that pushes your sizing down. That's kind of the main thing,
right?
Even though it's a dynamic board, and a dynamic board means different things in different spots. When you're up against the button, he has a much wider range. So while it's a dynamic board, he just has a lot of misses. So mostly what you're doing when you bet for value is you're trying to get a fairly weak hand to call, and when you're betting as a bluff, you're trying to get him to fold equity. And the smaller bet will achieve all of that because he just has so much trash in his range.
So I didn't bet big enough pre-flop. I bet too big post-flop. He did call, and he calls with all his 9x. Actually, it's a very 9x centric. And
why don't you have ace queen in your range? Oh no, we're looking at whose range are we looking at?
This is his calling range on the turn.
Okay,
So and then turn is a 10, and
okay, so you're betting sometimes, checking sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at the right. So okay, for some reason it's picking. I'm not entirely sure what the significance of the suits here is, but I think the major takeaway from this is that we sometimes bet, sometimes check, and this is why these spots are really confusing because we're bluffing on the flop. We have to follow through with some on the turn. Now, my natural instinct in game would be to give up with this hand because we haven't improved, and I would assume that we have other hands that have improved better, like Ace Jack, for example, has picked up a gut shot.
Yeah.
Ace 8 is open ended now. But clearly we don't have enough of those hands to balance our value range, and that's why it's betting. And again, the question always you have to ask yourself when it comes to sizing is, what would my value do in this spot? And your value basically wants to go all in with only 75% of pot left. And this has something going for it. Like if we get called by a 10 or a 9, at least we have 6 outs, unless it's ace 10 or ace 9 or queen 10 or queen 9. So we have at least some hope, but it's one of those spots that if we always go for it, we're over bluffing, and if we never go for it, we're under bluffing. And this is why GTO is hard. It's very, you're not going to be able to count the combos in game. To be honest, I don't mind just always giving up here. Because the fact that it mixes means the EV is the same for both options. So basically it's a break-even bluff at best, and at worst I think when we shove, let's look at what he's supposed to fold. Okay, so he's supposed to fold okay, so the strongest hand I can see that he's folding is a jack, which is a gut shot.
Yeah.
And might be the best hand sometimes if we have something like king queen. Will people fold it? Yeah, I guess actually this is a spot where maybe people overfold actually. So maybe that pushes me back to thinking maybe we should always just shove, because if people are overfolding, then our break-even bluffs become profitable. I definitely wouldn't find this in game, but then I don't know, like some people might call with a hand like king queen as well, going, well, I've got 2 overs and a gut shot, and I'm getting a very good price. It really comes down to what your read on population is. It's extremely unlikely that they're calling at the right frequency. The question is, are they calling too much or too little? If you're reasonably convinced they're calling too much, then you absolutely have to give up always. And if you're reasonably convinced that they're calling too little, then you should shove, and you can do that profitably. If you're not sure, I would err on the side of just giving up.
Cool. Right, one final hand, and I know you've got something to do. It's this is an interesting hand, just because like a year ago I never would have even defended this hand when to a button raise, which is what's going to happen. Just speed this up a little bit. So a year ago I wouldn't have even defended this, but
wow, that's incredible. You folded. Wow, what a net.
So Queen 10-10, 2 clubs. We got top pair, no kicker. He's going to fire out, I believe. This strikes me as a very, very easy call. Raising seems to be a terrible idea. The 8 is now good if you've got Jack 9, so that wets the board slightly, but he's going to fire again, I believe. Again, raising stupid, folding would be bad because we have top pair. I don't feel good about it, and now finally the king on the river, and he's going to shove.
Yeah, and, king is an interesting river. King is not the river we wanted to see, obviously.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, this is before I even put this in the solver, I felt quite strongly that this was the correct thing to do on all streets. With the exception of, I really felt like this was going to be a call some of the time on the river, but I folded because obviously in reality I just don't see what bluffs are really there most of the time.
Clubs are the obvious one, but some of those have the king of clubs.
So before we jump into solution, are you roughly on par with my analysis there?
Yeah, I think irrespective of what the solution is, exploitatively, I'm pretty sure this is how I would play the hand. Yeah.
So let's look at the final hand. Okay, so it's 20 big blinds effective. So there's some limp in here. Does that make sense? Well, why is this?
This is the button range. Yeah, there is some limping. Yeah, there's a bit of everything. There's some shoving, limping, raising, folding.
So queen 10 suited is an easy defend now that I realize this. We check 100% of the time.
Yeah, again, like this is not a low card board where straights are possible, so don't even think about leading.
So he bet about half pot, and so this is one where I actually kind of went off game tree a little bit. Do you want me to go to 33% instead, because that's the more common one?
Yeah. I mean, you can understand like what. Again, the big bet size doesn't really make a lot of sense here. If you go back to looking at what his range does, so just click back on the button. We can't range bet, but again, like question is what does our value want to do? Like, there's no reason why a 10 would want to bet big and drive people away. No reason for a queen to bet big and maybe not get action from anything other than a better queen or a 10. So our value wants to bet small, but we don't have enough of it to be able to bet 100% of our range. So we're splitting between small bet and check. He's probably betting. Actually, he's probably doing one of two things. He's either range betting everything, which is terrible at that size, or he's betting what should be the small bet size. So yeah, see how we continue against the small bet size, because that will be really much. So raising with queen 2 suited. Is that just the diamonds?
Oh, with queen 2 suited.
No, it's not the non-diamonds. Okay, so diamonds has the backdoor flush draw, so that one. Yeah, so this is a spot again. Like, what does our value want to do? Where are our bluffs coming from? And what the solver is doing is saying, well, okay, when we have a 10, we mostly want to raise for value. A lot of turn cards that can kill our action. Straight completing or flush completing cards. So therefore, our 10s are very heavily incentivized to raise now. We don't just want to be raising 10s, obviously. We have some bluffs, in the form of stuff like 9-7. We can turn into a bluff sometimes. But we don't want to always just be check calling our queens as well, because that makes that then when we check raise and a queen comes on the turn, we never improve. So what it's doing is it's check raising its strongest queens quite a lot. King, queen, queen, jack suited, queen, jack off. And then it's check calling more as we get towards the middle, and then it's check raising more as we get towards the bottom, which is quite often the case. You raise the top and bottom, and you call the middle. But for the most part, we're just calling here. So that's just a minor point. Really, the call is the standard play here.
So yes, the turn was a 8 of hearts. We're pretty much checking 100% of the time again.
Yeah, there's a little bit of leading because we have some queen, some jack 9 that's improved, but
he bet about half pot again, which would be all of these hands. Again, it's most of your Broadway, most of your 10s, and so on.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then Queen 10 suited is a pure call.
Pure call, yeah. We are into pure bluff catcher mode. We can just never raise for value here.
And then again, we're
pure check. This is a very bad card for us, so we're not going to have any leads here.
And so he went all in, which is the predominant bet size. It's most of his range, in fact.
Yeah, he should obviously go polar here.
Yeah, so Queen 10 suited, as I suspected, is a call some of the time. And in game, I really felt that he's not going to have the bluffs there for me to ever justify.
There's a couple of points. He's not going to have the bluffs. Even if he does have the bluffs, remember, this is a tournament. This is not a cash game. This call is only making, if he's bluffing it at exactly the right frequency, it's making 1/20th of a big blind. That's not going to be enough when we adjust for ICM. If ICM is even the slightest of slight factor. I mean, what's the pot now? The pot is when he shoves 30 big blinds. Yeah. So we are making 0.02% of pot.
Right.
The risk premium is never that low. So even if we know that he's bluffing the right amount, it's still a fold because it's a tournament. And that's another important distinction to realize. If you look at the top right, we have this. We were saying that this is chip EV. Tournaments are never chip EV. There's always at least a little bit of ICM. And so in these close spots, that just don't take a plus 0.02 big blind spot for a lot of chips. That's just torching money in a tournament. That's point number one. But point number two is he's almost certainly under bluffing. Just population are not going to. If you go back to his all-in range and look at all the trash hands that he's supposed to shove, like
Jack 7.
Is he really shoving 9-8 some of the time? Which is just like very bad bottom pair, or even the Jack 7s and the Jack 6s. I mean, there's so many of those hands, Jack 5s, Jack 4s, all those hands which are blocking straights. He's supposed to be turning into bluffs, and people just are not finding those bluffs. Like even a lot of his ace highs are shoving. Yeah.
So after those 5 hands, I feel quite good actually now that I have a reasonably decent sort of grasp of the fundamentals after working on this book, but at the same time, I think I'm picking the right spots to wonder whether I should be deviating from what I've learned. Obviously, I've made plenty of mistakes there, but I'm actually quite pleased with these hands, and even though I categorize them as ones I felt like I'd messed up. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And like I think you had a good intuitive sense of what the GTO solution was likely to be, but you also understood the exploits that you should be using, in which direction you should be deviating. And that's a really important lesson. Like, we are not GTO purists. We're not telling everybody play GTO in every spot. We're saying much more important to understand GTO and understand the principles rather than try to play perfect GTO. It is at the end of the day a baseline strategy. And it's a strategy you can employ when you're outgunned and you're playing against people who are better than you, and you're just going, okay, well, I'm going to stick to this, and then they can't exploit me. But in every other case, you should just be treating it as a sort of a general guideline.
I mean, I'll end on this interesting note, which is I actually think after a year of working on this book, I actually think right now my win rate is lower in the low stakes games that I play. But conversely, I feel a lot more comfortable in the bigger buy-in tournaments that I satellite into, which I think probably would be the correct experience if the people studying GTO, right?
Yeah, I think when you're playing at the lower levels, it's a bit like a golfer changing their swing. I think long term, it's likely to have long term it will benefit you. But I actually think, and this might sound funny, but I think it's harder to implement improvements in your game when you're playing at a lower level in GTO, because when you're playing at the highest level, all you're really trying to do is what's the GTO solution, and I will stick to that rigidly. But when you're playing at a lower level, the GTO solution is just the first step. It's, well, what's the baseline strategy here? But then the second and arguably much more important step is, but how are population actually playing? How is this specific player actually playing? And what does that mean for my strategy? Now I have to actually go off and node lock in my brain and try and come up with a new solution. And that's much trickier. As you get more and more practiced, though, you will get much better at that, and there will be huge profit gains. So it's one of those things where it will improve your game for sure when you're playing at the higher levels, and that's obviously a good thing. It might actually send your game back in the short term at the lower levels, but once it all clicks and you start making the right exploits, there'll be a massive surge at the lower level as well, because you'll be using all the best exploits.
Well, thank you, Dara. I learned a lot from that. I think other people will too. If you are learning stuff from this video, please subscribe, because this is an experiment for me and Dara. We may not continue with the YouTube channel, so we kind of want to see some interest in the subscribers and the views for us to carry on. Until then, thank you very much, Dara O'Kearney.
Thank you, Barry.
Yes, so we have got
Anyone who knows Barry knows he prefers dogs to people. So
sorry about that. Okay, so